The Great Devourer is at hand, and the Tyranids approach the 40k galaxy from all sides. Let's talk through the history of the Tyranid incursions in Warhammer 40k and what we know about the Fourth Tyrannic War. Hello and welcome back to Warspec Tactics, where today we're talking Tyranids, and with Games Workshop finally giving us a little bit more information as to the current state of the galaxy and the Fourth Tyrannic War that's upcoming, I thought I'd try and make a quick video to pull together our knowledge of what we know so far, how Tyranids have been functioning in Warhammer 40k, and how the new and hyper-evolved Tyranids of Leviathan are shaping up to enter the Galactic West. So far, I'm kind of surprised at just how reticent Games Workshop has been to talk about the lore of the Tyrannic invasion. From the big cool reveal trailer and the announcement at Adepticon, it was clear that the Tyranids are coming back into the 40k galaxy in force. We know roughly from which direction they're coming, but for some reason they've kind of left it at that, without really giving us many more lore details at the moment. Maybe a little bit surprising if they want to get people invested in the narrative of defending the galaxy against the Great Devourer, and what the next generation of Tyranids is going to bring to threaten the galaxy once more. In general, in Warhammer 40k, Tyranids are one of the most established factions in the game, one of the big and nasty Xenos threats from very early in Warhammer 40k's history, a mysterious plague of extragalactic space bugs originating from outside the galaxy, consuming all biomass in their path, and then repurposing it to build more organisms and continue the swarm anew. Everything is coordinated by the very sinister hive mind, the combined consciousness of the Tyranid race, which coordinates the invasions and builds a repository of knowledge, driving innovation and newly evolved organisms adapting to overcome each threat in turn. Each time the Tyranids attack the galaxy, they may be beaten back once, but they'll come back far stronger. Perhaps compared with a lot of 40k races, the Tyranids' history is fairly easy to classify. They tend to operate in enormous hive fleets and great invasions, so quite a lot of the story of their race and fighting tends to be in individual wars. The grand entrance of the Tyranids was on the world of Tyran during the First Tyrannic War. This was when the Imperium first officially encounters the Tyranids of Hive Fleet Behemoth, perhaps one of the most simple and ferocious swarms of them all, an enormous hammer blow that struck at the southeast of the Imperium, striking straight for the heart of Ultramar, and only being halted on Macragge by the sacrifice of the entire Ultramarines' First Company. Prior to this, though, the Imperium had a few low-down encounters with the Tyranids before. Hive Fleet Tiamat has some really interesting lore, an infiltration fleet that's conquered one segment of a galaxy, and usually not devoured everything on the worlds that it occupies, and is building a great big space beacon of some sort, and other mysterious encounters with gene stealers scuttling around the edges of the galaxy, particularly the Imgar ones. Following the repelling of Hive Fleet Behemoth, though, the next strike was Hive Fleet Kraken, a whole bunch of sinuous tendrils infiltrating the Imperium after a great wave of Genestealer cult uprisings on the eastern fringe. A particularly vicious tendril also brought the Eldar craftworld of Iandin to its knees. And then the Third Tyrannic War was the onset of Hive Fleet Leviathan, perhaps more highly evolved, more balanced, and more adaptable than any that came before it. An enormous swarm attacking from below the galactic plane, and only halted after the sacrifice of whole swathes of Imperial worlds, burning the biomass to the ground and establishing a cordon to keep the bugs back. Perhaps not truly destroyed, but at least kept safe from the rest of the Imperium by enormous sacrifice. In the Indomitus era, perhaps two of the bigger encounters with the Tyranids were the confrontation with the Blood Angels at the devastation of Baal, Hive Fleet Leviathan gradually overcoming virtually all defences until the Blood Angels were fighting the Tyranids on their last legs, only to be saved by a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, with the great bloodthirsty commander deciding that he didn't fancy the Tyranids getting the Blood Angels' skulls, and with the opening of the Cicatrix Maledictum used the opportunity to kill great swathes of Tyranids, piling up their skulls into a nice chaos icon on one of the moons of Baal. The other more recent conflicts was the fight of Hive Fleet Leviathan versus the Orcs of the Overfiend of Octarius. Imperial forces somewhat sitting on the sidelines for this one, again trying to maintain their Leviathan cordon, while the Orcs and Tyranids duke it out. I think it could be argued that the Tyranids probably came out on top of this, with the Swarm Lord slaying the Overfiend of Octarius, though the war seems to still rage on. That brings us to 40k 10th edition though, and the onset of what Games Workshop are calling the Fourth Tyrannic War, which we have a few scanty details on at the moment, though I feel like most of the stuff that we have is pretty much teasers. For what we do know though, it does seem to be that Hive Fleet Leviathan are front and centre. They are the colour scheme of the bugs that we've seen both from this new previewed Tyranid Termagant, plus the ones in the reveal trailer. It's certainly not impossible that there could be other hive fleets active though. Games Workshop did give us this teaser image of the Termagants painted up in a couple of new colour schemes that I don't think we've seen before. Could be kind of interesting if the new invasion was perhaps a multi-pronged one, with Leviathan there but other hive fleets about as well. I'm not sure it's really worth reading too much into new model paint schemes though. I feel like we saw kind of similar for a new couple of Necron dynasties when Ninth came out, which didn't really amount to enormous changes in the lore or anything. In a recent lore video, Games Workshop did say that there's a whole slew of new organisms held back by the hive mind for this particular assault. I guess they're always evolving and changing into new things, but I can't help but think that that's also a slightly nice excuse for here are some nice new Tyranids for you to buy. Get excited for some new Tyranid organisms, guys. I'm sure we'll be getting a fair bit more Tyranid info in the future, seeing as we've got lots of models to see for them, I suppose. But perhaps we do have a little bit more info as to the defense that's being mustered and where the Tyranids are coming from. GW have already said multiple times that they are going to be striking from the Segmentum Pacificus, so that's the galactic segment to the west of the galaxy. And that's kind of interesting in itself, just because the Tyranids usually seem to be striking from the east, like Kraken and Behemoth were. So this is an entirely new and unexpected angle for the Tyranids to strike from, and perhaps just slightly spooky for the general feel of the galaxy, as it really does add to the threat that the Tyranids are approaching on all sides, and we don't know how many are out there. The Segmentum Pacificus perhaps isn't one of the absolute most storied ones in Warhammer 40k. Quite a lot of the action does seem to take place around the Eye of Terror, I guess the Cicatrix Maledictum now, plus the Eastern Fringe where the Tau Empire are and the Tyranids have been in the past. So I guess it's good to know that no one part of the galaxy is getting off lightly. From the recent video teaser that Games Workshop did, they did have a couple of new galactic maps shown off. I thought it was kind of interesting that a world called Sanctum has got a little battle sign on it, and from a quick look at the Warhammer wikis that appears to be a chapter home world of the White Templars, a Space Marine successor chapter believed to be of the Imperial Fists, I'm guessing kind of brothers of the Black Templars. We also got a few close-ups of something called the Bastior subsector. I guess that one's going to be somewhere on the border between Segmentum Pacificus and Segmentum Solar, and a few fun details on these maps, including something called a predatory moon. Don't know if that's something that the Tyranids have engineered for themselves. Could be kind of similar to that Necron world engine that they had. Perhaps something that's powerful enough to kill planets, maybe. In one of their previous teasers, Games Workshop did say that the Imperium was having to mount a desperate defense of the throne world, meaning that the Tyranids are basically heading for terror. Kind of a major lore development, that one, as for the most part they don't generally seem to have been the most serious threats to the absolute centre of the galaxy, perhaps besides maybe Leviathan. Then they give us just a few little lore details as to the Imperial response. Rabute Gilliman is coordinating the defense of the Imperium along with the Indomitus Crusades, but the Tyranids are by far from the only threat, and he's also got to manage other Xenos races' resurgence, such as the Necrons of the Pariah Nexus. Just from the intro cinematic, you could see that many of the Imperial worlds were falling, and everything was definitely not all going his way. It seems like the main way that the action is going to be happening in the Fourth Tyrannic War is conflicts between Imperial counterattacks originating from local battle groups and some forces from the Segmentum Solar. They specifically called out Lord Solar Leontus is going to be leading one of the forays against the Tyranids. I guess when his new model came out alongside the Imperial Guard Codex, they did say that he likes to mount a rather aggressive defense of Terra. So kind of interesting that we get some proper lore focusing on him. It looks like he's going to be fighting the Tyranids as his first major outing. Otherwise, they also mentioned some elite task forces made up of Adeptus Custodes and Space Marines, and it looked like these were called Soul Blades or maybe Soul Blades. I'm guessing Soul Blades relating to the Segmentum Solar once more. Again, kind of interesting to see other Guardians of Terror like the Adeptus Custodes get involved too. It'll be interesting to see where the narrative progresses from this, whether or not it's all just going to be focused on fights on the border of the Segmentum Solar, or whether or not the narrative will actually go as far as a Tyranid assault on the solar system, kind of similar to what happened in the Gathering Storm sequence. Either way, it maybe feels like a bit of a narrative shift away from what we've had previously. The Imperium Nihilus and the Chaos and the Arcs of Omen all seem to be doing their thing, all while the Imperium is trying to deal with this new and enormous threat on the Galactic West. Lionel Johnson doesn't sound like he's going to be helping very much with this one, as he's apparently leading his own crusades within the Imperium Nihilus, which I'm sure has got more than enough problems to be going on with. So anyway, interesting to hear a few little details as to how the Fourth Tyrannic War is going to be unfolding. Let me know what you think is going to be happening with the narrative down in the comments. How far will the Tyranids get, and what are you most interested to find out more about? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. I'll certainly be aiming to keep up with any news and developments of 10th edition. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and that's how I can keep on making videos like this just about every day. If you'd like to help keep them coming, any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of